Today we'll be talking about surveys, and one of the tricky things about them inside of HubSpot is not only how to customize them, but how do we take that data that is collected and how do we actually get it to store on the contact or company records. So this is actually tricky once you start building it out, but I'm going to show you how to do it. It's pretty straightforward, but there's a couple things that you really just have to understand about them. So we're going to jump in and do it together. All right, let's go. I'm in my demo portal. I'll go ahead and expand the navigation. And if you go to automations and click this, you'll see that surveys are found here. If you don't have any surveys listed, not a problem. We'll create one together now. And let's just do a custom survey. So the use case here would be something like, hey, we've been doing business together and maybe there's an audit requirement where we have to collect a certain amount of detail and feedback back from those customers. Or it could just be that we want to do this for customer satisfaction purposes. Really doesn't matter, but we're going to choose the email option this time. So that's how we'll distribute it. And yeah, this is kind of a demo of what the options could be for you. And at the top, you'll see a couple of pieces here. So this is the actual survey itself. So as we drag and drop certain prompts into this piece here, the survey will start to populate, and that's it. This is what it's going to look like when they start the survey. But really what happens is they get an email first. So if we click here, we'll say, hey, contact first name, whatever. All this we can change, right? That's over here on the left-hand side, the email body. We can change the theme, all of that. So even my logo, I'm realizing is not the logo that I want to use. Not a problem. That's how you can change it. The recipients list, we'll circle back to this at the end, but what I found to be the easiest in most cases is to have a static list, and I'll show you a pretty fancy way to populate that too. That'll make it easy. And this automation piece is, I don't know, I don't really use it that much. You can set some of their default reminders out after X amount of days, and if you create workflow, it just spits you out at the workflow page there, so that's not super helpful either. Once the customer gets the email, clicks to engage in the survey and submits it, they'll get a thank you response back. So this is how you can set that up. It's actually pretty straightforward. Here's the tricky part. Whenever you have this rating and the customer fills it out and they submit it, what you're actually doing is getting a survey submission. I think they call it like a feedback submission, and that's it. The data only lives inside of that submission. If I was to go on to a contact record and they had filled out a survey, you would actually see it. Let's just grab somebody. You would see it listed here in the overview. The problem is though, it only stores it as a feedback submission, and what I want to do is collect the data and save it to the contact. So this is where things get tricky. I'll right click on the settings tab. Let's just look at our properties and it'll start to make sense here. Now normally you select the object, contact, company, whatever, but you may not have noticed that there are feedback submission properties. So some of these are pre-populated and that's fine, but none of these are going to be helpful to you if you want to save it on the contact record. Let's look at the feedback sentiment. We have one option for that. But let's say you want to say, hey, how's your experience with this part of our team? How would you rate this product? How would you rate that product? Those things, we need to create a property first. And let's just call this something like, let's call that feedback submission information. And this is just test about yourself field. And for the field type, I think this would make sense as a multi-line text. And we will create this. So now what happens is if we go back to the survey, since I've made the field, I need to refresh. So now I can look at the question types and I can say, okay, I have not a single line text, but multi-line text question that I would like to ask them, and I'd like to place it here. And now we'll see that we have these existing feedback properties. Tell us about yourself. Okay, so if I click that, we can see that this is actually saving the value here to that property. Great. And then up here, you can say, tell us a little about yourself. Help text, hobbies, interests, etc. It makes me happy. Little Zoolander. Okay, Anyway, so tell us about yourself. And usually I don't put placeholder text, but it can be helpful. And then you can, of course, make it required or not. Typically, I found that for these customer surveys, unless they are sincerely required, it's better to make none of them required, because you will find that you'll actually get better responses. You'll get some data versus no data, and you'll get more to work with in the long term. So that's great. Let's review and publish this one because you get the idea, and this will be sent to 215 contacts. I don't want to send it to people based on life cycle stage or anything like that. I think the static list is the best. So let's create a new list together, and we'll make it contact based. It's interesting that they made it an active list, because I believe static list is all you can really do for these. So choose a static list though, and then now we can add our filters where the contact property, let's say the state, cool. But let's say we're just targeting everybody in South Carolina. That's great. We will save this list. And now when we go back into our survey, again, let's give it a little refresh, reload the page. I wish it would do this dynamically for you, since it did just send us by itself. Maybe it would read on the way back, but that's not the case. Yeah, these are static lists, so like I said earlier, it has to be static, not dynamic, so make sure that you select that. So now when you send to the list, we can look at our test list we just made, and we have 32 contacts that live in South Carolina. And let's just say that's important to us, that it has to be South Carolinian responses, customers rather. Okay, I don't want to make this recurring. I want to do this one-off, but you totally could do that, and you could set it up for whatever you wanted to do by month. So let's just do a one-off, and then when we review and publish, that's all great. Surveys contain a field. I see. So because I refreshed for the static list, I now have to repopulate it. No problem. Let's do that one more time together. Review and publish. Going too fast. But that is the nice thing. If you just keep clicking on the error messages, it'll tell you exactly what needs to change, and no big deal. I recommend sending out a test survey, and I've set myself up for a test record. You can send it and see what it looks like. I'll cancel this out, that's fine, and we'll just publish it, and boom, we've just sent all of those out immediately. So great, that's really it. Now, I did promise that I would show you how to tie that data back to the contact itself, because even though we made the custom property, it's not listed on the contact. So what we have to do, let's go back to that and see what I'm talking about. Remember we selected on the feedback submission object itself, and what do we call it? Tell us about yourself. Okay, we actually have to go back to now the contact, and we'll create a property called tell us about yourself, and the group doesn't matter. I would just do information, but whenever you do the field type, this needs to match exactly what we did before. So multi-line text, and we create it, and that's fine. So great, both of those exist now, but they're not connected to each other. So how do we do that? We will need to do a custom workflow, and while this loads, cool, we'll just do one from scratch, and this will be feedback submission based. So we'll click this, hit next, and we'll set the trigger. For this example, one of the easiest things you can do to say whenever we get a submission back and we want to handle it is pick maybe a required field or any field that is standard, and just say tell us about yourself, and we want to set it to once it is known. Right, that'll trigger it. So we'll save this, and that's our trigger. I'm not going to do any kind of re-enrollments or anything like that, but now we just come down to CRM, and we will edit a record, and we're not going to update the feedback submission, the current object. Instead, we're going to get the associated contact. And now we can say tell us about yourself, and here We're going to the enrolled feedback submission again. We will find the tell us about yourself. And it is actually a variable that we're going to put here. So if you wanted to, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but just you could say from the feedback submission, and you could do it like that. But I think we just want to capture the value completely, and we'll hit save. And that's it. So we'll review and publish and turn it on, and that's the whole deal. So on this video, we have covered how to create a feedback submission, how to customize it, how to send your own static lists and how to set that one up too, and how to tie the feedback submission data to the contact record itself. So I'm sure you found that useful, but give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions, and in the comments, I'll try to help you out as best I can. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.